guys, so here are the notes for 1.7 day 2. We're going to write quadratic functions in vertex form. So basically we're going to transform a quadratic in the form of y equals ax squared plus bx plus c into vertex form. So we look at this here. What form is this? Yeah, you should have said that is standard form, right? And don't forget that vertex form is going to be y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. So I referenced in the 1.7 day 1 note saying that we can actually use completing the square to not only solve quadratic equations, but also put our quadratic function, which is in standard form, into vertex form. Okay, so the nice part actually with these, so it says write quadratic function in vertex form, identify the vertex of the graph. So we're going to go ahead and use that completing the square to do that for this problem. We have y equals x squared minus 10x plus 22. So notice how this is a little bit different from the 1.7 day 1 notes. Notice instead of having equal to a number, our function is now equal to y. And we need to make sure we have that because that means we are trying to keep it as a function instead of solving. Okay, so we have using the completing the square. Now, the nice thing about this one is that our a value is 1, so that makes it a little bit easier. So don't forget that we need to make sure that our quadratic is a perfect square trinomial. So we look at x squared minus 10x plus 22. Is that so? Well, if we look at 22, we know that it's not a perfect square, so that is a definite no. So what we're going to do is we're going to move the 22 over to the other side with the y. Now, you need to keep the y because our final answer is going to be a function, okay? So I have y minus 22, and I need a plus something, so plus blank equals x squared minus 10x plus blank. Okay, I'm using that formula like we've done before, b divided by 2 squared. Okay. Notice that our b value in this case is negative 10. So I have negative 10 divided by 2, square it. Negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5, and I square that, give me 25. So I got 25 to both sides. Now I combine like terms. So on my one side, I have y plus, and I think that's a 3. Yep. And then on the other one, I have my x squared minus 10x plus 25. So we're going to go ahead and factor that, okay? So remember we do one set of parentheses. We're doing a square of a binomial. What's the square root of 25? That's going to be 5. Now notice our b term is a negative. So we do need a negative and then 5 squared. Our last step that we need to do is actually just move the 3 over. So we have that vertex form of y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. So I have now y equals x minus 5. And notice that I'm putting the 3 at the end because that's actually my k value, okay? Now from here, we need to figure out what is our vertex. So I found my equation. Now I figure out my vertex. Remember, vertex is your h and k. H is inside the parentheses. It's the opposite of what we see. K is outside and is exactly as we see it. So basically our vertex here is going to be 5, negative 3. And that's my answer for the vertex. Okay, now actually the nice part with these problems, there are going to be 2 ways that you can rewrite quadratic function from standard to vertex form. So this is our completing the square, so CTS. The other form is going to be the axis of symmetry. So I'm actually going to show you that way as well. Okay? Okay, axis of symmetry. So how we're going to do this is we are going to find the vertex first and then just plug it into our y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. That's it. So remember, in standard form, how we find the x value of the vertex is opposite of b over 2a. Please don't get that confused with the b divided by 2 squared. Sometimes that happens, just be careful. Okay, so our b value was negative 10. The opposite of it will be positive. I do 2 times. My a value is 1, so my x value of the vertex is 5. Now I plug that into the equation. So I have 5 squared minus 10 times 5 plus 22. That's going to give me negative 3. So I have found my x and y. So I'm just going to plug that into my equation there. So I have y equals, our a value is 1, because notice, if we look at the standard form, that a value is 1. So whatever the a value is on the standard form is going to be the same a value on our vertex form. That is very important to know, okay? So then we have x. Make sure you do the opposite of what you see. So we do have to do minus 5, since our 5 was positive for the x. And k is exactly as we see it, so that's going to be minus k. Or sorry, minus 3. And then, of course, since we did find our vertex, which that was very easy, we already know that the vertex is at 5, negative 3. So when you use the axis of symmetry, if you want to do the vertex, figure out what that is first, and then just plug it in, you can do that. Okay, now let's look at another example. So this time, once again, we're going to write the quadratic function vertex form, so from standard to vertex, and identify the vertex of the graph. Now notice here, a value is something other than 1. So what I would like you guys to do is go ahead and pause the video, use either completing the square or the axis of symmetry to rewrite this function in vertex form and find the vertex. Okay, let's see what you did. So let's first talk about completing the square. Okay, our a value is something other than 1. So our first step is we need to move the 25 to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 25. So now I have y minus 25 equals 2x squared plus 24x. Now my next thing is I need to figure out what is a number that both the x squared and x term have in common. That's going to be 2. So I'm going to take that out. Okay, so y minus 25. I'm going to go ahead and do my plus blank because I'm going to have to do my completing the square part there. I take 2 out. I'm left with x squared plus 12x and then plus blank. Okay, so now we have b divided by 2 squared. Our b here is going to be actually 12 because we rewrote this, so it's not going to be 24 anymore. It's because I took that 2 out. Now also notice I did not divide both sides by 2 like we did when we solved. The reason being is because we are writing a function. And so because our a value is 2, we need to keep that when we rewrite it in vertex form. So when you're doing this, don't divide by the number. So I get 36 here. Now this is where it gets a little bit tricky. A lot of you would have just put plus 36. But notice, if we do 2 times 36, what are we actually adding? We're actually adding 72. So just be careful with that. Okay, now y minus 25 plus 72 equals 2 times, I'm going to go ahead and factor this, x plus 6 squared. Because 36 is the perfect square, square root of it is 6. Our middle term is a plus. Now let's combine our like terms. So negative 25 plus 72 gives us 47. And now what I'm going to do is move that 47 over to the other side. So I have 2 times x plus 6 squared minus 47. And that's going to be my equation. Now let's figure out the vertex. So our h is in the middle, or inside the parentheses, k is outside. Remember, it's the opposite of what we see for the h. So that's going to be negative 6. And then we have negative 47. Okay, now let's try completing the square, or sorry, we already did that. Let's try axis of symmetry. Now, one thing I want to note, remember that our A value on the standard form was 2. That was our A value. We had to keep that. And notice our A value in vertex form is exactly the same. That is should what happened. Okay, now let's try the other way, which is axis of symmetry. So this way, we're actually finding the vertex first and then plugging it into the equation. So I have x equals, we do the opposite of b, which is negative 24, over 2 times our a, which is also 2. So we get negative 24 divided by 4, which gives us negative 6. We plug it into our formula, or I guess our function. And we should get negative 47. So our vertex here is negative 6, negative 47. Now let's talk about our A value. The A value from the standard form is 2. So that should be the same A value when we do our vertex. Now we have y equals 2 times x. Don't forget h is the opposite of what we see, so plus 6 squared. And k is exactly as we see it, so negative 47. So here's our vertex, and then here's our equation. Okay, so you can try either way. Now, if in the instructions for any like quizzes, tests, or homework assignments tell you which way to do it, make sure you do so. If not, it's up to you what way you would like to do it. Okay, make sure you watch part 2 of this video in which we do a word problem.